Welcome to Cinematic Conversations with me, myself, and I, the show where I discuss movies, the film industry, and pretty much whatever strikes my fancy. I'm Lauren, and today I'm going to be discussing my view on the film industry with some brief TV comments as we kick off 2024. Today's episode is brought to you by me. If you would like to support me, you can do so by liking, commenting, and subscribing on this video to engage with my channel. Or if you would like to support me monetarily, you can do so by checking out my Buy Me a Coffee page, which will be linked in the description down below. Thanks so much. Before I can really talk about 2024 though, let's quickly just kind of recap 2023. 2023 was a turning point for the film industry, as we're obviously in the streaming era, and there were two major strikes, the WGA and SAG-AFTRA, yet the box office pulled in over $9 billion, which, although is not at pre-pandemic levels, is on the rise. People are returning to the theaters. They're returning for movies based off childhood toys. They're returning for over 3-hour-long dramas. They're returning for old IP, new IP, jump scares, and concert films. Dare I say, the movies are so back? Although audiences were definitely going to theaters pre-July, obviously the Mario movie skyrocketed, and of course there was also Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. But I feel like when people think what was the movie event of the year for 2023, Barbenheimer. I mean, not only were theaters full of people, but social media feeds were full of people. I was seeing people wearing pink, I was seeing people wearing fedoras, I was seeing people wearing pink and fedoras, all because really of a meme that raked in over $1.44 billion for Barbie and over $955 million for Oppenheimer at the time that I wrote this script and I'm recording this video. And I loved it. I dressed up for Barbie and I did wear pink and black when I saw Oppenheimer, but I didn't go suit up. But it was exciting. It was electric. I've seen movies more often since moving out to LA, and I had not seen the theaters like this before. And it was so exciting for me. And it has obviously dropped off a little bit than that insane weekend of July 21st. Obviously, that was a very special time for the theaters because not only were people going to see a movie, a lot of them were seeing both movies, and people were even attempting the double feature, and people were debating whether you saw Barbie first or Oppenheimer first and why. I did see both movies twice in theaters, but never on the same day. So I did not double feature it out. But I still feel like I had a great experience, and if you participated, I hope you did too. Admittedly, one of the times I saw Barbie was a special screening with YouTube, and I had to see Oppenheimer both once, just to like, whoa, and also in 70mm IMAX, because, as I will brag about this for the rest of my life, I got to be on set as a uncredited, but paid COVID PA when they were in Princeton, and I'm gonna talk about that literally forever because I can. Theaters did not slow down in the fall either. Horror movies, Five Nights at Freddy's and The Exorcist Believer did very well. Then October showed up. I mean, Tales of the Eras Tour, insane numbers for a concert film. And then of course we have Martin Scorsese's epic Killers of the Flower Moon. Now I've seen a lot of Scorsese films of varying lengths, varying topics, mostly because I accidentally took a class all about him in college. It was untitled when I signed up for it. It was the only one for my schedule. And then I had with a film studies class all about Scorsese. I definitely admire him as a filmmaker, and I personally did not mind the 3-hour, 26-minute runtime. Would I say it felt sort of long? Maybe, but did I think it felt that long? No, I did not. Additionally, considering the box office numbers for these long movies recently, audience as a whole must not be minding either. Potentially all the binge-watching TV shows, episode after episode, has actually set us up for long film success. Because we're used to it, right? I mean, I don't really binge watch that much, but as a whole, I think people are used to kind of watching a long thing. And although people say, oh, but I like to pause and get up, etc., I think people can handle it. As an aside, this does bring up, there was a whole kind of drama and debacle over whether it was an accessibility issue. And my stance is, if you're at the movies and you need to go to the bathroom, just go to the bathroom. Like, you can get up and go to the bathroom, and if you miss the movie, the great thing is, you can either rewatch it, you can wait for it to come home, or you can look up what happened in the 3 minutes you were gone. It's fine. It's really fine. Now, there are some movies that do have, like, intermissions, especially maybe think older movies or Bollywood movies, And I think that's just something that hasn't really come to American audiences yet. But if the filmmaker and creatives kind of plan with an intermission in mind, kind of we think of like musicals, two halves, that's great. But if you decide as your own theater chain or person that you are gonna just randomly pick a spot for a break, or oh, perfect halfway point, I think that's a problem because that's not something that the filmmaker put his, her, or their thought into, right? Like, it's just you decided this, and that's what I don't agree with. But yeah, like, if you need to, leave the theater. No one is gonna judge you for having to get up in the middle of a long movie or even a short movie because, frankly, people are just watching the movie. They're not paying attention to you unless you're on your phone or you're talking or something. Really, I promise. 2023, though, was not stopping in October. November and December closed theaters also very successfully. Not only was there the Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, the prequel to the Hunger Games movies, but there was also Renaissance, filmed by Beyonce, Wonka, and The Color Purple. Is anyone else sensing a musical theme here? Speaking of the whole musicals and movies thing, I think it is so funny that they're not marketing these movies as musicals because they're like, oh, audiences don't respond well to musicals. Well, how is the audience supposed to respond when they show up to a movie and then bam, it's a musical? And these are like musicals. I mean, I haven't seen Wonka yet, but I did see The Color Purple. And I loved it. I liked the story already. I knew the story, and I like a musical. But this was a full-on musical. I'm talking about like full-on choreography for everybody in the frame, right? Like, this is a musical. And if I didn't like musicals, I don't think I'd be like, oh wow, I've been duped into seeing a musical. Haha. No. Just an interesting tactic. Additionally, I would like to give props to two movies that I saw in the past couple months that blew my mind, and that would be The Holdovers and Eileen. Both of these movies, I was just totally enthralled the whole time. Very different plots. But I guess I love a good kind of coming of age and reckoning story, which I think both of those sort of were. Both of them, I believe, were shot on film, which probably helped also, just aesthetically, but I just thought they were fantastic. And Eileen especially was not a long movie. And I know it's sort of funny after my spiel about I think people can handle long movies, but also I do think there are some stories that you can just tell them and you don't need to add extra fluff or padding and you just tell the story as it is, raw and real, and people will eat it up. And if they're not eating it up, that means the story's just bad. And however long you're making it, it's just gonna be bad the whole time. My 2 cents. Nostalgia core, I think, is just also through the roof right now. As we're in 2024, people are feeling maybe a bit old. You know, people who started the pandemic in 2019, now we're, 6 years older. I mean, not quite yet, but you know what I mean. And obviously, not only was the Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, nostalgia core, but also the Percy Jackson, The Olympians Disney Plus show, I think, has people really feeling some sort of way. Speaking of streamers and other internet frenzy kind of films, Saltburn, Priscilla, and May December have been all over my timelines. As of the time of this recording, I've only watched May December, but I have gotten some, clips and tidbits and read a couple articles about the other two films. My take on the whole comedy category delineation, which has caused strife across the internet, is that comedies aren't always lighthearted. Dark comedies and tragic comedies are, I think, often essential to help audiences understand and digest very difficult subject matter, which otherwise is just too dark or triggering to consume at all. Things that are complicated and difficult can have humor in situations. People are used to kind of casual dark humor, and obviously the subject matter of May December, which involves grooming and pedophilia, is serious, complicated, and bad. But that doesn't mean there can't be humorous moments of the movie. I mean, the whole thing is shot like a kitschy Hallmark movie, for one thing. We have Natalie Portman's character, who's a very serious method actor, even though she's obviously a terrible actress. Like, these things are objectively funny. And that is why, although I don't know if I would have called it a comedy, I can see how people are calling it a comedy. It goes to show that a lot of modern audiences' media literacy skills and ability to perceive subtext are literally at an all-time low. Going back to Oppenheimer, which we spoke about a little earlier, a ton of people were literally saying that Christopher Nolan's movie was promoting the atomic bomb because the protagonist, Dr. Oppenheimer, never explicitly said the bomb was bad. Even though he's visibly torn up with guilt, he hallucinates about people's faces melting off, and he is obviously traumatized with his guilt and says he has all this blood on his hands, and he's not happy about it. He's not like, ooh, I have blood on my hands. He's, obviously in a panic. Nolan's daughter was the person he cast to have her face melt away in the hallucination, destruction, death scene. If that's not saying this is bad, I really don't know what is. Just because something is not explicitly said in a movie does not mean that it's not being told otherwise visually. When I wrote the script, I should have realized this was bad timing, but I didn't, so here we are. If you're enjoying this episode, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing so you don't miss the next one. Alongside all of these new releases in 2023, there were also an impressive number of re-releases to theaters. And it's not because the studios were like, oh my god, it's a special anniversary, we have to show this to people again. I mean, I think that's what they were trying to pretend it was. But I personally believe it was because people were on strike. They weren't able to make any new movies. And because the actors were on strike, the actors couldn't promote any movies. So studios didn't want to lose on that marketing power, and they pushed a lot of release dates back. A lot of movies that were supposed to come out in 2023, we'll be seeing in 2024. Or at least they'll be in theaters. I'm not sure if we'll be seeing them or not. Considering that the Writers Guild of America, the WGA, and SAG-AFTRA, the Screen Actors Guild, were on strike for 148 days and 118 days, respectively, with overlap, I think it comes as no surprise that the media landscape was dramatically altered this past year. I am staunchly on the side of the writers and actors, and I would have been on the side of the directors as well, had they not taken, in my opinion, a bad deal and gone on strike themselves. But they didn't. And I am really happy that they fought for better working conditions. And they didn't give up until they got at least a better deal than they were initially offered. Overall, the guilds were fighting for increased wages, better health care, residuals, streaming information, and, of course, AI protections. I know some people think that the negotiating committee should have pushed more, fought harder to get the best deal possible. And in some ways, I do agree there were definitely some lapses that I don't really love. I'm not in either guild, so I had no vote or anything like that. But I understand where people are coming from. However, I also understand that people were desperate to get back to work. I mean, when you're out of work for months anywhere, things are tough. And as an LA resident myself, I understand just how expensive stuff is. I have a job and things are expensive. I cannot imagine how scary it is to be out of work for so long and have no idea when work is coming back, because even when the strikes ended, obviously, people then had to get a job. I'm very lucky that my job was not eliminated over the strikes because I work in post-production and it was for a very different kind of venue. But I know a lot of people who did lose their jobs. I would like to say that although I have feelings about this topic, I'm not the right person to get this info from, and there's a lot of people out there on film Twitter, Instagram, etc. who can talk about this probably better than I can. One thing that I will address, though, is how many people who are not in the film industry did not understand the striking workers and implied that writers and actors were acting really entitled by these outrageous demands. And while many facets of the industry beyond the WGA and SAG were impacted by the strikes and were not able to work, I truly believe that fighting for better working conditions can only benefit everybody. I think a lot of people nowadays discount unions, and they don't consider that they have the working conditions and life that they have because of past union workers and labor movements that fought for a better future. We have unions to thank for minimum wage, the 8-hour workday, abolishing child labor, generally safer working conditions, and so much more. Without past union workers rising up, who knows what our life would look like today? We have to think about what we want our life and our working life to look like 5, 10, 20, 50 years from now, 100 years from now. I think we want it to be better. I think people sometimes think Hollywood and think Beverly Hills, when that is the minimum, the 1%, right? The majority of WGA and SAG members don't even make $25,000 a year, which means a lot of them before the strikes were not qualifying for healthcare through the guilds. For context, working minimum wage, say, for 40 hours a week for ease, no breaks, federally generates $15,080 a year. However, in Los Angeles and New York City, where the bulk of the industry is, minimum wage is $16 an hour. This means that working minimum wage for 40 hours a week, again, let's say no breaks, for ease of math, let's say, would generate around $33,280, which is notably higher than what a lot of WGA and SAG members are making. I also am really fed up with people who then say, oh, well, then they shouldn't have decided to go into film. They shouldn't have been a writer. They shouldn't have been an actor, yada, yada. They should have gotten a real job. And I'm fed up because most people, obviously maybe not everybody, but most people love watching TV. They love watching movies. Where do they think these things come from? Someone has to make them. Someone has to act in them. People have to spend hours and hours and hours, months and years into making this content that you can absorb in 2 hours or 30 minutes even. And those people, the filmmakers, actors, writers, everyone in IATSE, anyone who's involved with those projects deserves to get paid fairly and have a life above poverty. As we progress into 2024, the animation and VFX sectors of the film industry might also be shaking things up as the Animators Guild contract ends this year, so if they don't get a deal that they want, they could go on strike. Additionally, a lot of VFX workers at various studios are talking about unionizing or have even started unionizing. And as someone who's worked in a VFX house, it was my first job in LA, I fully support that. They deserve better working conditions. I mean, I think frankly a lot of people do, but like VFX artists especially. In light of the recent successes of animated films at the box office, and of course the heavy reliance of VFX workers in everything from a blockbuster to your random movie that you see, I think these workers could cause serious disruptions if they want to. And honestly, if they don't get what they deserve, which is a lot, then they should cause disruptions. I think people forget that strikes are supposed to make an impact. They need the studios to feel like, oh, they need to make a change, because obviously they're not going to just change out of the goodness of their hearts. This, of course, to me, places the ball entirely in the court of the studios. So if they want to prevent such a thing from happening, they know what they need to do. The other thing that the studios, including the streaming giants, are doing, which is just has my jaw on the floor, is raising prices for these streaming services without adding anything new to the service. And you might be saying, oh, well, we just talked about the strikes. Obviously, if they're going to pay their workers more, they need to raise prices. But these price hikes have been going on from before the strikes happened, and they're just continuing to rise dramatically, but they're not promising new content, and in a lot of ways, they're taking content away. To add insult to injury, Prime Video has announced that they will be adding ads to the platform unless you pay additional money. So in this case, they're not raising your subscription, but they're making what you have been paying for worth less money. So they're like, oh, if you want to avoid the ads, just pay an extra $3 a month, which on top of it, sure, doesn't sound like a lot, but that really adds up. Other platforms are just making more tiers or changing tiers to just try to basically force consumers to spend more money. As a chronically online person, I see tons of tweets and posts asking when cable's coming back. Because with merging of companies and bundles like Hulu and Disney Plus, I think officially becoming one, and NSPN is also, you can have a Disney bundle there. I mean, it's basically cable, but it just costs way more money. And it's not even really more convenient now because the prices just go up dramatically. And if this is the only way to watch content, depending on where the content lives, like you don't really have another choice. What I'm basically saying is we made something old new again. Yay! There is a conversation to be had on how streaming services are so desperate to make more money that they are cracking down on password sharing when they used to be like, watch anywhere, blah, 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 blah. And now they're like, you can only watch from your home or say you're traveling and we're going to check in on you. But that's a conversation literally for another time. I do not have it in me to talk about that. I think also following the strikes, a huge question that's facing this industry is, where is AI going to go? What role is it going to be playing? Because although every industry out there, I think, is facing the AI problem, I feel like it's been very prevalent and top of mind for the film industry. And I think it's safe to say it will play a huge role. As much as I personally don't love the thought of artificial intelligence taking over a creative space, I think it's just unrealistic to assume it won't. Especially because AI is used for all sorts of things. I think people think of AI-generated scripts or AI extras or characters or even a full lead potentially being AI and everything about them is AI. But AI exists, I think, in a much more silent and maybe deadly way, yet to be determined. From where I work in the industry, which is, again, in post-production, I see AI being used to upscale resolution. I see it being used for retiming purposes. I think people also forget that the average person also has access to AI Not even just like in those apps where you can put yourself in the 70s or make yourself in a yearbook photo, but if you use Google Photos Editing or Lightroom, they have, erase stuff, magic fill. That's using artificial intelligence and machine learning to make that look better. It's not just copy paste anymore. The clone tool still exists, but you don't really see people using that so much. And that's computers doing that work. So if that's what you can access as a regular person, just think about what these studios with all their money can afford. For a general thought on art and AI, above just film industry stuff, it's upsetting to me that people are using AI to create art because they're stealing other people's work, whether those people are alive or dead. There is a reason you can ask AI to turn a photo into a Van Gogh-style painting or write a poem about a certain subject in the style of Robert Frost. And it's not a good reason. It's a theft reason. The other really big question facing us that I alluded to a little bit earlier is the permanence of media in this digital age. I have always been a collector of stuff because I'm a hoarder. Thanks God. I have vinyls, I collect DVDs, but a lot of people haven't really been doing that recently now that most people listen to the majority of the music on Spotify or Apple Music or Tidal, and people mostly watch stuff on streaming services overall, or they see it in theaters, but they don't buy it for themselves to have at home. And even people who buy stuff, maybe they're only buying the digital file. They're not having a physical thing that contains the piece. It feels like it's becoming a more pressing issue. Aside from studios like Warner Brothers writing off totally finished films like Batgirl and Coyote vs. Acme just for tax purposes, which is so ridiculous in of itself because people worked on that and it's literally done and now people can't see it. But movies and TV shows that have been born to a specific streaming service are being killed off. Similarly, because studios either want them as a tax write-off or because they don't want to pay the residuals to the people who worked on that content. And these streaming services were the place that spent so much money and time to make this content, and you can't watch it anywhere else. Sometimes the services are selling the content to another service or to like Tubi or something like that. But in some cases, it's just gone, blipped from the internet. And unless someone has illegally downloaded or pirated a file, it's just gone. They're not selling physical media and you can't buy or rent it anywhere. It's literally gone. As someone who has made projects, I can't imagine how heartbreaking that is for something you put your heart and soul into, or even you just worked on. Say you didn't even really passionately care about it, but you worked on it. And it's wiped off the face of the earth because a giant company needs more money and doesn't care about the stories that it's like the brand is about movies and TV shows, and yet they don't actually care about stories. It's all about money. And obviously it's all about money. It's corporation, it's capitalism, but it's still depressing. And there's no recompense, right? You don't get anything from it. And even places that do sell physical media, who knows if they're going to keep doing that? Best Buy just announced that they're stopping selling this media in 2024. And I personally mostly collect Criterion Collection movies. I recognize Criterion movies are limited in choice and expensive. So the loss of mainstream and accessible content is a huge hit. And I don't know if we'll be able to recover from it, at least in the near future. I can hope that because vinyls have come back in style, DVDs and Blu-rays might come back eventually. Maybe even VHS players will come back. Who knows? But it's scary, especially when people joke about, oh, if the cloud shuts down, all your photos are gone. That scares me because while I could lose my photos, I am one person and I think I'm important to myself. But films and TV shows and documentaries and everything, those capture society. They capture times. They capture life as a whole. And if we lose those art forms, we're losing something we cannot just get back. To end this whole spiel a little more positively, here's a couple movies that I am excited for that are coming out in 2024, as of right now. You better not push these back. And that would be Argyle, Kung Fu Panda 4, Challengers, The Fall Guy, If, Inside Out 2, Joker, Folie à Deux, I don't even know if I pronounced that correctly, Gladiator 2, The Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim, stoked for that movie, Nosferatu, and Mufasa the Lion King. All different genres, but I'm excited because I love movies. And these stories have potential, even if they end up sucking. Before I conclude this episode of Cinematic Conversations, I would like to highlight what some members of my community have to say about the film industry. If you participated in either my poll or answering the question, literally, thank you so much. And if you want to participate in future polls or questions, follow me on Instagram. It's just my name, link down below. It was nice to see that out of the 28 people who answered my poll asking, do you feel positive about the future of the film and TV industry, 68% said yes, which I know is not that much over 50, but sometimes I feel so negative about it. So it's just nice to see that even if it's a little bit of a majority, people are feeling hopeful. I also asked my audience what their primary concern is regarding the film industry, and these are some of the answers that I got. Big media companies mass-produce formulaic and streamlined movies. Insulation of community and ballooning budgets, or difficulty promoting mid-budget films. I worry for the smaller creators who will be drowned out, especially as AI makes mass-produced content. Growing use of AI in all its forms. To a lesser extent, streaming platform issues like removing original content or residuals. Gender equity still. AI making bad entertainment super cheap to produce and displacing real art. Repetition. It's all been done before. I want new angles, new people, new designs, new stories. Fair compensation for writers, actors, or AI. Distribution to those who don't have streaming and proper employment of artists. Complete financialization, private equity style thinking and management. It was both gratifying and saddening to see that other people share my woes about artificial intelligence along with some of the other points that I mentioned earlier. Hopefully, if we band together, we can secure a better future for both creators and consumers. And that wraps up the first ever episode of Cinematic Conversations with me, myself, and I. Thanks so much for watching or listening, and please be sure to give it a like if you liked it. Comment down below any feedback so I can improve or any opinions you have, and subscribe so you can get the next episode as soon as it drops. See you next time.